Oh, never mind. I don't need to shut down, apparently. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Roach Crossing Weekly General Live Stream, May the 5th, 2022. It does not feel like feels like it's been a lot more than a week since the last live stream. Full stop. So, yeah, I think last time, hello, Carolyn. I don't know I don't think that was completed last time. The gigantic rack behind me, I don't think it was completely filled out. And there's only one or two containers that still need watering ports. I was holding off on those for some reasons. Turn this fan. Redirect. There we go. Only a couple more that need watering ports added, which I held off on for various reasons. Hello, Shane. Good to see you. So yeah, this is the final form for this particular rack in here, and species will get shuffled around. Some containers don't have their final contents in them. Some things like the Macinarina and Dichronorhina will be going downstairs onto the beetle racks now that I feel more confident with the husbandry and not having to do daily care strictly. And yeah, so it's been a long week again. It doesn't feel like it's been a week since the last live stream. It feels like it's been far longer. Carolyn says, I'm so very sorry for not being here last week. I've been sick for 2 months. I had family come over. Also, our order came. Thank you so very much. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you've been sick, but I'm glad that the order reached you in a timely manner and that everything's good. Hello, Tarantula Jake. Jake from email. As I've gotten in the habit of doing, apologize if I haven't gotten to your email in the last day of cleared out emails was May the 1st-ish, May 2nd-ish. So yeah. I think I did answer yours, but if there's a new one waiting, it'll be a little bit. I may go through and do some emails after the stream, but observant viewers may notice that something is missing in the room. It's not the blinding mantid light, although I think I've decided I want to move the mantids downstairs. There's been, again, touching on things that have been going on, there's been a lot happening here in terms of infrastructure and organization. And so those will be moved downstairs, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to put over there, actually. Oh, hi, Chris Snyder. Victor's outside. We have been doing long walks before the stream to sort of get rid of some of that extra energy. And because the weather's so nice and I've been going in and outside a lot today, his brain is very much so he's becoming very acquainted with spending lots of time out in the yard. I have all these projects going on with the bunnies and the guinea pigs and all the poultry. And so he's very much so spending a lot of time outside now and quite content with it and digging lots of holes. Excuse me. Digging lots of holes, especially in the path, which I don't like. But he doesn't poop in the path. He goes off to the sides of the yard and poops. And half the time I don't even realize where he's going poop. It'll just, because of his diet, it just sort of disintegrates over a couple of days. So, but Chris, the mantids are not missing. They're still there, but they won't be there forever. Maybe even by next live stream they'll be moved. But so not Chris Snyder, but I think he's fine with me using this, a friend of a friend's name is Christian, has been coming over and helping me with stuff, and it's been wonderful. He is a very diligent worker, and we've been getting a lot of stuff done. A lot of infrastructure stuff has been getting done, things that I have either been putting off or haven't been able to prioritize. I've had an opportunity to do that with husbandry done, and with me being relatively on top of emails. I mean, again, I'm out maybe 3-4ish days on answering stuff, but that's nothing compared to a week to 10 days. So, and with and up to date on order shipping and whatnot as well. Hello, Tennyson. Good to see you again. But anyways, the observant viewers, again, as I was saying, there's a lacking of stuff there, and that is actually because, perhaps against my better judgment, I've decided to add another one of these black shelves over here. The reason for that being the Aranavega are just starting to take up a lot of room. I like them being up here because it's accessible. It's very easy for me to just run in here and take care of them. If I'm getting ready for bed or something, I can run in here and do last minute husbandry. Otherwise, I have to run all the way downstairs into the bug room to take care of stuff. So it's easier here. The temperature up here will be very warm. I don't pretend to be observant, says Chris. Temperature here in the summer will be very high. I block the air conditioning vent, and I tuck some stuff under the door, and I will often open up the window to let the warm air in. So it'll be very warm and high humidity in here, so I can keep containers I can keep things more on the dry side. But anyways, so it was coming time for me to sort of rethink that. I also wanted to, another thing that spurred this was I've been putting a lot of containers underneath that table, and that was where I was keeping the springtail bin last late summer. And the springtail bin, because of the nice weather, I've been able to get out and look for springtails. The springtail bin is now up and active again with a bunch of species I had to go out and recollect. And so, I have this big, gigantic desiccation bin and all these project containers of Aranavega and stuff. And thus, it necessitates me putting another shelf over there. I was thinking maybe I would do more of the traditional streamer thing and have like something nice there, maybe a branch with some bromeliads or something very pleasant looking. But again, the ends justify the means, and thus a new shelf will be going there probably by the end of tonight, and then I have to try and fit everything onto it and reorganize it. And that will probably be, other than emails, the last thing I do tonight because I'm very tired. But this is actually a good tired. This is not like a burnt out kind of had a lot to do sort of tired. This is a very like physical, I just need to sort of relax for a bit and sort of tired, a job well done sort of tired. Let me look into the chat and see what's been discussed. Tennyson says, quick question, how difficult are Pseudomops septentrionalis to contain? How do you recommend keeping them from escaping? Any good generally escape-proof enclosures? The adults aren't too escapey. They're relatively fast. They're nothing like Hemithrosaurus, though, in that respect with the adults. And my colony is currently in one of those bins up there, and I don't even have a barrier on it, actually. Right now it's mostly nymphs, but even when I had adults in there, I didn't even keep a barrier on it because it doesn't take a lot of time to do the husbandry in the bin. So I could just open it, look around a bit, throw food in. Wouldn't have adults crawling out all over the place. But I use the Roach no crossing barrier on that, and will add it because there's another flush of adults that should be popping up pretty soon. So I've fallen in love with critter keepers and glass tanks again. I like the look, and with the critter keepers, the stacking with the amount of airflow that's allowed. They're also good sturdy containers. The dimensions are perfect for having enough substrate for all sorts of species, either a little substrate or a lot of substrate. And I like that the way the lids clamp down with the cloth on them makes them pretty much entirely escape proof. So I really like that, and they do very well in there. And again, with this style that I have, where I've added these watering ports to things, I can leave for very long periods of time and just sort of set the food in the driest corner so it doesn't get heavy mold or anything like that, and spray in just to provide the roaches with something to drink, especially during the winter time when it's more important. But during the summer, to kind of bump the humidity up and also just give them the option to drink some water instead of just having to get it off of their food. And somebody else can do that too. It's something that's very easy for me to teach anybody. Just like, okay, just hold this up here, spray it, move on to the next one. It's very simple and straightforward. So Carolyn asks, I have a question. How long does it take for some beetles to breed, and how can you tell if they are boy or girl? If you have adults, you should start seeing, which I sent you adults, so you should start seeing mating behavior just right away. If you flip them over, the males have a deep crease down the center of their abdomen, and females have a completely smooth belly except for the little segments of the abdomen. There are some males that have an extremely subtle crease, and so they appear very much so like the females. But if you look close enough, very close, you notice that there is no crease there. Tennyson asked, what kind of container are those? Those are faunariums, and they're I don't know what brand they are. I can't remember. Zoo something, Exoterra, maybe? I can't remember. But the equivalent from another company and what's been around longer are the critter keepers, and you can use those just fine. Now, one difference I've noticed between the critter keepers and the faunariums, the faunarium plastic seems to be a higher quality. It's sturdier and a little less brittle, and I like that for roach bins especially. But they're a little bit pricier than the critter keepers. And also another nice thing about the faunarium lids is there are, if you look, you can see them very subtly there. I'll just grab them. I have a whole wall of them. I might as well. If you look, there are these clamps here, here, and here. These faunariums have 2 clamps, and the critter keepers only have 1 that goes right in the center. And so the faunariums get it clamps down better because there's 2 of those pieces instead of just the 1. And it can be kind of a pain to open up the critter keepers, especially when I have the cloth on them, because there's only 1. You have to really apply the pressure very carefully to pop it open. And with these ones, because there's 2 of those, you grab both of them and pull. It comes off a lot easier. So I definitely prefer the faunariums. I have a boatload of critter keepers, but that's because the pet store that I do some wholesaling and stuff with is able to get the critter keepers in bulk very reliably, and I need infinite numbers of critter keepers for isopod projects, and I only need so many of the faunariums for roaches, since I use the faunariums for the roaches, the critter keepers for the isopods. So continuing down the chat, Chris says there's a Blatella asayanai running loose in my office. It stopped by to see me but refused my invitation to return to its home. Yeah, they're very pleasant day active roaches, and I don't think it'll happen unless there's a color mutant discovered in Asahanai to be bred for. But they make really good feeders for stuff because they're small, they're day active, they're squishy, and the only problem is, of course, the climbing and the flying. But a lot of people who and they're already introduced to the United States, so it wouldn't matter if they got out. Like, they're already pretty much wherever they could be in the country. And have been for many decades. And so, but the fact that they look 1-to-1 like German roaches pretty much, definitely very off-putting to a lot of people. But maybe if we could get a color phase going that doesn't have the pronotum marks or is gold or brown or black, people would be very into using them as feeders because they breed very fast and only in enclosures, and they're day active, and a lot of things like to eat them. So, Chris Snyder says, care to explain watering ports? So, on the front of all those containers is a piece of brass micro screen over a hole that I have essentially soldered into the containers. But I don't like using soldering guns. I like the consistency. So I have an old glue gun and I just use the heated up tip as basically a soldering iron. So I get a nice consistent size when I push it into each of those. And so I will do that, pop the hole into them, clean the surface, and then hot glue, high temperature hot glue from the inside so debris doesn't fall in from, when the roaches are walking around and stuff. And then I will hot glue a piece of brass micro screen, and that obviously keeps stuff from getting in and out because it's brass micro screen. It doesn't rust, and it provides a point from the side so I can just go up and down and go side to side and spray directly into the enclosures without having to take every one of them out, set it down, spray it down, put it back. So I can just go right down the sides, right around, and spray everything down very well, which works very well with my well ventilated setups because they're constantly losing water from evaporation because of ventilation, but a lot of stuff really likes that. Tennyson asks, are critter keepers easy to heat? My house doesn't often go above 68 degrees, which is the main reason I'm excited to get out of this house. Yes, you can use a heat pad from the pet store. You can use a seedling growth mat that you get at a hydroponic store. You can go from the side and use a ceramic heater or a brooder, red lamp heat bulb like I used to do when I lived with my parents. Or as you can see here, the bottom row of the critter keepers or the faunariums there, I say critter keeper interchangeably for both of them unless I have to be specific. There's the heat from the heat lamps rises up and naturally heats the bottoms of those containers too. So that was another thing is the faunariums have, with this higher quality plastic, they have a higher melting point than the critter keepers do. I've noticed, I have to account for that when I'm making the holes in them because I don't like to get the extra material and I don't like it looking all like messy and whatnot. I want to make a nice clean puncture in and out, and so I have to wait a bit longer for the plastic on the faunariums to melt versus the critter keepers when I'm making the holes. Carolyn Nichols asks, what does the mating look like for the sun beetles? One will be behind the other one with their abdomen tips touching. If you look up beetles mating, you should be able to find a picture on Google because they all look the same. Madison Shine says, Roach Crossing merch when? Yes, this is my custom-made, custom-ink Roach Crossing shirt. And this is a weird one. I was gonna go with 100% cotton or something like that, but then this came up on their bulk options thing, and I felt the outside and I thought I'm gonna hate wearing this, but it's a different material or lining on the inside than on the outside. So the outside is more durable, rough, traditional t-shirt material, and on the inside is a sort of softer material, and I actually really like it. So hello, Michael Hare. And I'm still waiting to hear back from the company that makes these hats on the Aaron Vega hat. I have a sneaking suspicion they were not impressed by the pictures that I sent them, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter because I have to pay a certain amount of money to get them to make the prints in the first place. Maybe they just didn't think that I was being serious or something. So I gotta contact them again, but not at the moment because I have other things I need to prioritize. So, but yes, that, and I was looking into maybe some mugs. You have to make some catchy slogan mugs, maybe some fidget spinners, perhaps Roach Crossing fidget spinners. All the Zoomers going crazy over Roach Crossing fidget spinners, perhaps. So, but anyways, yeah. So that's one of the things that's going on is the new rack that's going up there. primarily for Aaron Vega and a couple of other things. But I think I will end up keeping all of the Aaron Vega up here, just because I like being able to easily take care of them at any time of day if I feel the inclination. And they are one of my favorite roaches. Chris, you can add this to the tally of times that I say something is my favorite roach. This is just Aaron Vega. Tennyson says, I have a 20-gallon Zoomed heat mat, but I stopped using it because I was told they are a fire hazard. Has this not been the case for you? Also, could those enclosures have a heat lamp on them? Anything that's creating heat is a fire hazard. Just, I would say, keep it away from anything flammable like wood, which, ignore the wood floors that are in this room. Keep it away from anything flammable. Make sure everything's when you plug it in and you screw anything in, that it's all done nice and tightly, and the plug's not hanging halfway out of the wall, etc. But I feel like a lot of heating things are pretty safe. I have heard supposedly from a couple of other bug people who have had fires start for whatever reason. I don't know any of the details on that, and I'm a little skeptical on some aspects of the stories, because I have been running electrical devices of every sort, perhaps not even in ideal arrangements, for almost 15 years now, and I've never had anything come close to burning down or anything shorting. I will say, though, a lot of people seem pretty confident in their electrical, wiring capabilities, and that makes me nervous. So I don't do any of that. I just buy good surge protectors, and I buy the good clamp lamps, and I don't keep the higher than the wattage recommended on the lamps. So I've never had any sort of problems. Heating pad needs a thermostat in line, or it may overheat. Tennyson. And the heat mats I was using for some cultures over here from the hydroponic store said that they were optional to hook up to a thermostat, but it said that it wasn't required. Now, that might be a different story for the pet store heat mats, but the hydroponics ones, whatever the brand that I got, that was a seed starting mat, did not say that a thermostat was required. It just said that they were thermostat compatible. So let's see. Carolyn says, I will be back. I got to go. I think we already knew Aaron Vega was a favorite. Tarantula Jake says, do you keep domestic beetles in with each colony or in their own container? I had heard horror stories of molting roaches getting eaten. I used to keep them with a lot of things, and I've gone on this rant a couple of times before on the channel, where a lot of things you can keep communally and they do fine together. And sometimes what happens is you inadvertently, or it's just the course of the colony, you will do something that shifts the balance from favoring one thing to another thing. And you may then go ahead and point fingers and say, they're doing this to the other one, when you've actually changed conditions that are more favorable to this other organism. And so it looks like they're the causal agent for the other species decline. And some of the origins for this were when I was keeping dermestids with dubia. And obviously, here's the thing, is you should not be having a bunch of dubia dying and corpses piling up if your colony is healthy. Anyways, I was keeping them with dubia, and the dubia production was sort of falling, and the dermestids were increasing in numbers. And I thought, the dermestids are eating the dubias, they're to blame for this. But what then sort of changed my mind was, there was a time where I hadn't fed the colony for, a couple of days or a week, and I went to look in, and there were a bunch of dubias molting, and the dermestids weren't doing anything to them. And I thought, this is weird. You'd think that with all these dermestids, that they would just shred these dubias the second they were molting if they were the problem. But what was actually going on was, as the frass was accumulating, And as the dermestids were tearing up the egg cartons, they were making them less suitable for the baby dubias to go and hide in. And they were also making it more suitable for their larvae to go and hide in. And so the pile of dog food in the corner, which, was a less than ideal habitat for the dermestids to stay in initially, with all the frass and with all the shredded egg cartons piling up and compressing, it made it a more ideal habitat for them. And so their numbers just started to go through the roof. They were physically pushing out the newborn dubias and whatnot, stressing them. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, if you started with a bunch of dubias and they were doing well and you just wanted a little extra for cleanup because it annoyed you or because, for whatever reason, add the dermestids to there, and the dermestids will constantly be kept under thumb of the dubias because of their population density. But if you add the dermestids to an ailing colony of dubias, it's not like it's not going to make anything better from just adding them. So, but currently I do keep lesser mealworm beetles in with my dubias. They do an excellent job, and they inhabit lower sections of the substrate more consistently, which puts them out of the range of the newborn dubias and whatnot more frequently. So, but I do keep Dermestes maculatus. I have tried multiple times to keep Lardarius. We talked about this on another stream, how it seems that Lardarius, despite being a pest, but doesn't seem to be heavy infestation level pest. Dermestes lardarius is apparently a temperate dermestid with a diapause requirement. And I think that, in my experience, the diapause, I'm looking to see if the bug on the window was a dermestid, actually. I think the diapause requirement comes in at when the larvae are large and they should be molting to adulthood, that they need to be cooled to induce pupation. And for adults to enter another phase of egg laying after a season's worth of egg laying, they also need to be cooled to induce ovulation. So there's a weird noise outside. So that's my theories on Dermestes lardarius. And another species I'd really like to keep is Tulpinus, which is, I think it's one of our native Dermestes, and I find them occasionally. And again, from past experience with them, I think they too need to be cooled. And I really don't like working with stuff that needs to be cooled like that, but I may bite the bullet and do it anyways. There is a very large Dermestes from Arizona, New Mexico, on the road where we would collect the Aranavega, what TJ thinks are Erratica. And last year, Will and I went and poked around and tried to find some mule deer carcasses, and it was the first time where we couldn't find any on this road. But you'd flip the mule deer carcass and there'd just be tens of thousands of the dermestid larvae and adults on it of this species. I want to say it was Caninus maybe, but they're very large. I want them. The curse is that every time we bring them back is that they would just burn out on the way back home, where I would deprioritize them. But now I have the means to throw them into a perfect setup the second that I get home. And so this year, if I end up heading out that way, I will go looking for the carcasses and finally get a culture of these giant Dermestes going, hopefully. So I really like them. They're very interesting beetles. I'm half tempted to keep some Dermestes ater. I would probably put them in a critter keeper to make sure that they couldn't escape, because they are very readily flying species of Dermestes, but they don't have any sort of diapause or anything like that. And I want to say they might be native to the United States too, which I think is very bizarre. Maybe they were originally a southern species and then they were brought all over the U.S. with various goods. Tennyson says, I've had 8 of my Blabberus species Honduras molt. I've had no problems with Dermestes, but I personally am keeping very few Dermestes larvae in the enclosure. Spiders in my room are very happy. They do fly a lot, I've noticed, Tennyson, about Dermestes ater. Chris says, I found something that looks like a Dermestid today. Toss into a deli cup with some food. We'll see. Luckily, they can't climb. Otherwise, I have quite a few. Yeah, where was I gonna go with this? Uh, on this question of chicken or the egg with species affecting each other's vigor, I have some Neatus darklings that I use as cleaners in some cultures of stuff, and they're in my question mark roach colony, my Thuria oligrangiani, and they're in all my Bersatria colonies. And my Bersatria fumigata variety pallida are not doing very well at all, and the darkling beetles are just surging in numbers. And so, actually, something I should do tonight is go down and pull all the Bersatria fumigata variety pallida out of their culture and basically redo the whole bin. So, but then again, as I was saying, there's these Neatus darklings are also in my Thuria oligrangiani culture, and they're getting outcompeted by the question marks. Like when I look in there, there's maybe only like 3 to 5 adult Neatus at any given time. Versus if I look in the Bersatria fumigata culture, I'll see like maybe up to 100 of them. So it's a situation where the Thuria got a foothold and are keeping their thumb on the Neatus, which is perfect because the Neatus will eat any extra dead Thuria and will just sort of maintain a presence in there as well, but they'll never get to the point where they're physically pushing out the question marks. So, hey, some eggs, thank you. Yes, this is Roach crossing merch. Well, that's another thing I should talk about. So I've had this Aranavega floridensis. This is Archbold, which looks identical to Lake Placid, and I lost my Archbolds. And maybe if I go to Archbold Biological Station ever, I will be forced to collect this locality again, despite Lake Placid being like extremely close and them basically looking identical. But anyways, but it's time for a new roach crossing roach, I feel, because like I love my Aranavega floridensis and I love all the Aranavega from the Southwest, but I feel it's time to get a new sort of mascot up on the site and on some stuff that I wear around and whatnot. And so I think I want to do Hemithorsassera vittata, but the problem is it's so yeah, exactly, some eggs, Hemithorsassera. But the problem is it's so difficult to get a picture of the adults on a white background. Like they are just moving constantly. And so it makes it very difficult. Needed 10 reasons I love roach is short. Love my isopod one. Mm-mm. Sure, yeah. I should make one of those eventually. But anyways, yeah. So I think that's the most reasonable candidate because of how much I like those. But and now's the perfect time because pretty much all the Vittata matured in like a gush, and so I just have adults now. And it'll probably be 6+ weeks until the next batch of babies pops up. And I really should look into staggering the next batch so that I don't have this happen. It's not, people are patient and they've been pretty popular, but it's not it's not as good for having them available for sales when you get like these cohorts mature and then a bunch of babies and then they die. Like I need consistent availability of mixed sizes based of a strictly not strictly, a mixed size group instead of, a bunch of smalls, a bunch of mediums or larges, etc. And so I may, when some hatch out, I may stagger them. I might keep a bunch of them in solo containers or just like sprinkle one through each of those containers so they'll grow more slowly without other Hemithorsassera, though it might backfire and they might get a lee effect from the roaches that are in there too. So, but yeah, Hemithorsassera vittata, definitely a good candidate, very eye-catching, would make an excellent species for that purpose. Vocabulous, hello, says, how are the millipedes doing that you collected on your trip? So I haven't really seen most of my millipedes. I now have a dedicated millipede rack, and I have on all the isopod shelves, and this will be visible when I do the tour, which I got to get to that tour. Will be coming up probably late May or sometime in June. But anyways, I have a bunch of bottom shelves on the racks that I've sort of decided to let be millipede container spaces as well. And so there will be 10 gallons or 5.5 gallons on the very bottom, on the very bottoms of all these isopod racks. So I haven't really seen them. The Choctella Cummins eye, I do see semi-frequently. The only ones I really see out and about constantly are the Chicobulus. They're pretty reliably out even during the daytime. Sometimes the Spirostreptus fisheri. Spirostreptus fisheri. Spiropius fisheri. I need to get back on top of Spiropius fisheri. Yeah. They're out pretty reliably in the evenings. A lot of the flats, all the urids just disappear into the wood, which is to be expected. I think also when I set a lot of the stuff up, it's dry during the winter time, and so it needs to be a really good soak daily to get a lot of the species to come up and be active. But during the winter time wasn't necessarily a good soak for all enclosures daily. But during the summertime, when the ambient humidity is higher, very light misting will bring a lot of stuff up. But when I check on them, pretty much everything's doing fine. And by doing fine, I mean they're still alive, including the flats. I have no doubts that the urids will produce some babies, but it's the Aphiloria and the Pachydermis and the Sigmoria and all of those genre that, I was just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks, and we'll see if any of this husbandry is actually viable. Because it would be really nice to offer some captive bred, the first captive bred Aphiloria, polychroma and whatnot. I know they'd be extremely popular. And I also know that people would try to cut corners with the husbandry with what I perceive to be their ventilation needs and whatnot, and would probably end up killing quite a few in the process if my methods are correct. So my catalyst says orthoporous species tend to be out for me all the time during the day too. Yeah. Oh, and that reminds me. I'm going to give orthoporous an honest go this summer. I'm going to collect some on the Arizona trip. Maybe even justify going out to West Texas to collect some, because, and this is another thing. This is something that, and Alan, if you're here, you can feel free to chime in, because I've been complaining about this for years now. Like, nobody has raised confirmed orthoporous in captivity from like egg to adult. There will be pictures of supposed babies and all this other stuff, but then you never hear from those people ever again. Or people look at the pictures again and they say, "Oh, it's millipedes that snuck in from my substrate," or something like that. So, having seen orthoporous in the wild many times now, and having been able to observe them when they're at their peak activity, which is like the summertime, is like the summer nights in the summer, or the nights during the summertime, not even necessarily after rains. It's just things when it's monsoon season. The humidity's higher and it's nighttime is cool enough that a lot of stuff will come out, even if it's not recently rained. But they're just eating just random debris and twigs and mesquite leaf pieces and poop, and they're just like mating all in dead darklings and all kinds of stuff. Just all of this. So diet is most likely not an issue. So then I have to think, like, what else? Well, when Will and I were out there in September, and it was the nights were pretty cool, I'll say that much. But we went out to some places that were really good for orthoporous during the summertime, and I think I found one or two. And so I'm wondering if maybe the key here is that they need they need heat to breed, or to the babies may need heat to get going or something like that. I mean, they're a desert organism in southwestern U.S. So, it makes sense that this triggers them to lay eggs, or triggers them to breed, or triggers them to grow, or something like that. And so, I'm gonna try a heated setup, and well ventilated too, because they are very dry tolerant. We would find them underneath, um, like, refuse. It's not like palm. Like, yeah, I guess some of it was like palms and stuff like that. But at some rest stops, you would lift up like a big piece of palm or a fallen yucca trunk, and it would be dry underneath, and there'd be like 7 of them taking refuge under there. They're not like living there permanently, but they're staying there long enough that this is a reliable thing that they do. They don't need to be crazy moist all the time. But at the same time, they're not going to survive this long term. But they use these sort of habitats. They have this sort of tolerance innate to them. Transgenial Jake said, "I never thought of catching wild and making my own culture. I hunt a lot, and lately I see Necrophila americana. I think I will attempt to culture them." I would love to work with Necrophila americana. I might put out something dead at my cousin's house when I go out there in a couple weeks, because she has them reliably on her property. The problem that I've run into with a lot of sylphids is the mites. They have a lot of mites on them, at least in my area. The commensal mites, which are commensal in the wild, but when you bring them in captivity and put them in a container, and the mites enumerate and then decide they want to leave the container, they just bombard the beetles and just smother them. So if you try raising Necrophila americana, I would suggest putting as much effort into getting mite-free individuals, or getting mites out of the stock you've collected, as possible. What I'll probably do is collect them, put them in a temporary container, put all kinds of rotting, disgusting stuff in there for them to be encouraged to oviposit, and then as soon as they've oviposited, go and painstakingly pick out as many eggs, maybe like a dozen eggs, and put them into a sterile container. Make sure the eggs don't have anything on their surface, that they're as clean as possible. Put them into their own separate container, and then raise up the stock that hatches out of those eggs, because those mites will. And this is a problem that I've had for it's a not Sylphia, is it Sylphium? Necrotes surinamensis, which I have captive bred a long time ago. 2010 was a heck of a year. Necrotes surinamensis, Oikioptima have this problem a lot. What's the other? Nigrophorus? Nigrophorus have this problem too. All of these dermestids don't seem to have it, though. I think they're on the carcasses when it's too dry, unless no relationship has emerged between them and these mites that are on the early stages of decomposition. So Narcissus definitely are not difficult to raise and breed. Species like Gordonis just take a long time to grow. Like Gordonis, from egg to adult in captivity, I think I had some that only molted maybe like 7 or 8 times in like 5 years once from Gordonis. But I am working on captive breeding some localities of Gordonis, just to offer captive breds, and in case they ever get a protected status or something like that, because they are a Florida endemic, So Necrophila is an autocorrect, right? No, it's Necrophila, not necrophilia, which is a different thing. But necrophila are necrophiliacs. Let me look it up. Yeah, necrophila, not necrophilia. Why? I looked this up on Google. Why is necrophilia illegal? Necrophila americana. Yes, Necrophila americana, the American carrion beetle, not to be confused with the American American burying beetle, which is a federally protected species, I think. So my brain saw millipede genus. What about changing containers often? The problem with changing containers often is those mites will get in their various stages will be all over the beetles, under their wings, in between the segments on their body. The egg is theoretically the best time to isolate them without the risk of the mites. I could be wrong though. The mites may lay their eggs on the eggs, but I feel like that's the best chance will be to get the eggs. There might be. I had talked to some people to see if there were mite specific insecticides, or well, there would be insecticides, would they? Mite specific pesticides that could be applied that wouldn't hurt the beetles. That did not get very far though. Yeah, sylphids. There are all kinds of sylphids all over the United States. There's actually a really good diversity even in the Midwest. I'm particularly fond of Oikioptema novaborescens. It's smaller than Necrophila americana, and it has a black body instead of a yellow pronotum with a black center. It's sort of like a kind of a strawberry fleshy reddish pronotum with a blackish center. And I'm very fond of those. I can find them locally around here. My yard is too dry for them, and I get the other species, which is rugosum or inequally. I've been trying to figure out what the difference is between those two species for like 10 years. Nobody can tell me what it is. But anyways, one of these two of this all black species of Oikioptema, but I do much prefer novaborescens, which seems to be a species of floodplains and moister places. So, anyways, but over both of those, I'd like to culture Necrophila americana because they are the largest and most striking of that group of sylphids. Yeah, Carolyn, just ask any questions you may have. Pronotum is my weakness. I can't remember what the Nigrophorus pronota look like. I know there's that one species that's very pretty. See which one it is. I mean, Americanus is pretty, but there's another one, and this is quite a specios genus too in the United States. And the one that I find that I have found historically that I feel is extremely beautiful. I gotta find it though. It's tomentosis, which has the yellow hairs on the pronotum, and it's a very large beetle too, very large Nigrophorus species, and they're pretty common. Not in my yard, but in in some spots that I've gone looking for them with baits. Um, it's relatively common throughout the summer. Just a very very pretty beetle. And another one was a Nigrophorus postulatus. There's one that they think is a specialist on was it black rat snakes or something weird like that. That it's just a weird generalist egg parasite and brood parasite. This Nigrophorus postulatus. It's so weird. Such a weird thing. It's such a weird group of beetles. The sylphids are. You know, there's Eclipia heterosylpha. Oh boy, I've never seen heterosylpha before. Oikioptema, Necrophila, Necrodes. Necrodes were pretty easy to breed. I could still, I could probably still get some of those again if I asked a certain somebody very nicely. Thanatophilus. That's a cool name. Where are these found? That's all over the place. It's just weird. Like all these different genre must specialize in like very specific dead things. Sylpha, genus Sylpha, Sylpha tristis. Interesting. Introduced to North America. Anyways, that's a neat rabbit hole. Um, Tennyson, did you end up getting to my email about a possible communal combination? I have not yet, Tennyson, but I think after the live stream, I'm going to go through and clear out a couple days worth of emails. That and getting the rack up, I think, are the primary things on my list of to dos after the live stream. Yeah, the pronotum markings are very nifty. I'm trying to think of any. A lot of Blabberus have neat pronota. Eublaberus serranus is very variable pronota. The Hormetica, Leuci Hormetica, a lot of Blabberids have really cool pronota. I always, what I thought was very interesting, and it's even more interesting to think about how this pattern recurs with some roaches, with semi-related but not directly related things looking very similar. The fact that Eurycotus decipiens, Paraplaneta australacei, and Doralea orini all have like the same pronotum. It's like if you look at them all next to each other, it's like the same pronotum. And out of those, the only two that are like particularly closely related are the Paraplaneta and Doralea, and I think that Paraplaneta and Doralea are actually sister genera, so they're very closely related. But Eurycotus is in a completely different subfamily, so it's definitely an outlier, with respect to that. But it's just like all of them developed this pronotum marking. Eurycotus decipiens is a New World species, and the other two are Old World. And they all have the same pronotum marking. It's like I'm curious what the underlying physiological and genetic like things are. Like, what is the advantage in the context of being one of these species to having this pronotum marking? And they all have it as nymphs too, and it's most prominent on the Eurycotus when they get larger, and on the Doralea, it's not as much so on Paraplaneta australacei or australacei. But it's on Doralea, and it's pretty much 1-to-1. They have like the same like furrow in the middle of the pattern, and the back of the pronotum has a ridge of dark pigment as well. So this is very interesting to think about. And I'm curious what it is. Now, with some things with pronotum markings, or with things that have dark pigment like melanin, I don't know if it's melanin. It's probably melanin, but I don't know for sure if it's melanin in insects. But melanin, at least as I had learned it in my ornithology class, one of the reasons you see melanin on the tips of things on birds, like on like the wings of gulls and terns and things like that, why a lot of things have black wing tips, is because melanin, the physical properties of melanin or something like that, confers an extra degree of rigidness, or not rigidness, of toughness. It makes things more durable. Melanin conveys some sort of durability. And so they will have this adaptation to have melanin on the tips of the wings, where there is the most wind shear or something like that. So it's the part of the wings that experience the most turbulence and the most physical stress will have the melanin. And so with a lot of roaches, especially burrowing roaches, and I think immediately of Pycnoscelis in the adults, they'll have the melanin on the pronotum, and that once something's an adult insect, and in most insects they're not going to molt again, the opportunities for repair are very, very, very minimal with respect to how their cells regenerate and whatnot. So basically the final exoskeleton is all you've got, so it's got to last. But anyways, burrowing roaches like Pycnoscelis, the whole the center of the pronotum will be black, and I'm wondering if that's a situation where, because the pronotum is used to kind of scoop up when they're burrowing down, they'll dig in and sort of shovel in with the top of their pronotum. I'm wondering if that explains, in things like Pycnoscelis and whatnot. May also explain why Panesthea, which is burrowing, a lot of the burrowing species or log living species tend to have a lot of dark or black in their coloration versus things that are just sort of like running around out and about, like Paraplaneta americana or some of the Parcablata, like Virginica or Fulvescens, are lighter colored. So as I get off of the rant there, I'm gonna read through the chat. Chris Snyder says aliens manifest into this with a very specific look and powerful ray guns. Certain species of roaches mimic these aliens, explaining that look. A survival technique of the better I look, the more likely I will be collected by humans. Yeah, I mean that's how the world's starting to operate. And first and most proven point example of look good to humans, get your genes forever perpetuated would be dogs. And then now with all the horticultural plants that we use for aesthetics and not for direct consumption practical reasons, but with dogs, different breeds of dogs that have been selected for different isopods. Certainly a lot of our fancy isopods creations, at least with respect to multi-gene projects, would not exist long in the wild. In some cases, I guess I shouldn't speak too soon on that, because we don't know what the orange mutation confers to the isopods in a wild setup or wild context, because in North America, every single population of Armadillidium nizatum that I have ever seen has the orange gene in it. And it's with enough frequency that if I see it, I'm not like freaking out. It's like in most populations, it's prominent enough that you flip a board and you see a handful of individuals with it and a bunch of individuals that seem to be hets. So it's not getting selected out. And being a homozygous recessive trait means that it's kind of difficult to select that out of the population if the hets are not significantly impaired with respect to survival compared to the homozygous dominance. But it's all a matter of perspective. Something that we would look at and be like, oh, this is very clearly detrimental. It could be conveying something very important or very efficient to that species in the context of its survival. Don't get me started on what used to be the dime a dozen roly-polies I caught as a kid. A whole lot more than a dime at this point. Orange isopods are favored in Georgia-style soil. Mayhaps. And nizatum are pretty common on clay substrates too over Vulgaria. It's kind of hard to find Vulgaria in certain parts of North America. Isopods are overrated. Roaches are better. Now, having a foot in both in both countries here, both the isopods and the roaches, I enjoy the isopods as works of basically as more of an artsy context than I do roaches. Roaches, I'm appreciating the full splendor of their biology. At least with the mutations in isopods, I enjoy them, in sort of an artistic way, where I am seeing what sort of colors and combinations and whatnot can be unlocked by breeding them together. But I do appreciate the beauty of natural localities, which give it time, it'll catch on because people mix their Klugii Montenegro with their Dubrovniks, and now everybody's got mutts of those, but then nobody cares, but then they do care, and then they see pictures of one that was really pretty, and they wonder why the isopods they just dumped a bunch of money on don't look like the thing that they saw online and they fell in love with and they had to have, and it's because the breeders didn't care to keep their stock straight. So, yeah, I do like the localities of isopods. And isopods have a faster turnover time with respect to generation production than most roaches do. At least, Porcellio scaber, you can get several generations in a year, whereas some roaches, you'll get, not worst case scenario, middle of the road scenario, you'll get like one generation every 8 months with some species. So, to people who are brainwashed by society's roach hating, yeah, I have been dabbling in roach selective breeding for a couple of years now. I don't have any projects specifically to my name with roaches that have been gotten out there and ready to go. The closest thing was or is the golden dubias, which I'm still trying to pick a name that is not golden shower, as Kai and TJ desperately wanted them to be called golden shower dubias. I do not want that at all. But that was taking an existing line and then outcrossing it and then selecting it for not falling apart because their exoskeleton is too frail. So, and of course, Dan from Limberlost Exotics made his mahogany hissers, which have been growing in popularity and are different enough from the Cleveland stock to really stick out when you put the two of them next to each other. But then, I would like to have something, roach crossing origin, strictly roach crossing origin. So I have been working on a couple of hisser lines. And I feel it offers, hissers are already quite popular, and I feel like getting some lines out of pure stock that are very unique will continue to power that popularity. And as much as people like their isopods and like their half-assed isopod projects, eventually when I have some of these proven out hisser projects and you can physically hold a large hisser in your hand and admire the beauty of this large hisser in your hand, there's a lot more appeal there than, these isopods that you paid way too much money for and lost half of them in shipping and lost another half of them when you set them up because you weren't given the proper care information, and they become more of a reminder of your failure than of the fun of keeping invertebrates. Golden Slumbers. That's not bad. I really need to pick a name for that line already and get it out there. But the other problem that I've discussed this on another stream, but here we have a different set of folks who have a different perspective. The problem is, for some period of time, the gold dubia, Blaptica dubia gold, was circulated in the U.S. because you can get sparing production out of them, or you can get some production out of them, was offered in the U.S. And so I don't want this new strain, which is better than that strain in all ways except for the color, because the color is still a little bit lacking compared to the original golds. But it's one of those things where, what is it, the spider ball pythons, where they have like some genetic issue that's innate to that trait that causes them to have neurological issues. When you go too far down that road with that strain of Laptica dubia to that phenotype of that very solid yellow coloration, it's affecting something in the exoskeleton, and it drives down their fertility and their vigor and their physical ability to stay together. That they lose their tarsi and they lose their wings, they lose a bunch of other stuff, and they get damage on the edges of their bodies and things like that. So, I'm getting a little chilly in here. So I feel like the strain that I produce is the best compromise because you get a lot of the coloration, and they're definitely distinct from regular dubia roaches, but you don't have the problems that are innate to the original gold line. So in that way, it's an improvement because you can actually have a colony of them without fretting or without the wind blowing too hard, and all of a sudden you get down into the red and the colony never recovers. So I would like to dissociate the line's name from gold. I want to try not to have gold in the line. The other thing is there is a person on the Roach forum, Jack Frost, who's been working for what I think is a decade now on a line of dubia that he's been very, very, very religious about his selective process and whatnot. I haven't heard from him in a couple of years now, and I think I tried reaching out a couple of years ago, but he would pop onto the Roach forum every couple of years and be like, "Here's how my project is," and this is like the guy's only thing that he does. But anyways, but the strain that he selected for these yellow gold looking dubias, it's a different. The color is coming from something else. It's a completely different trait or set of traits than the dubia gold line is, and so those they have no vigor problems. Oh, it looks like this stream stopped for a second there. That's a very flattering picture of my face. Can anybody hear me? Am I still audible? You guys get a beautiful view of my ponderous face there. If I'm still audible, okay. So the last time that this happened, it was a whole bunch of shenanigans with me trying to end the stream to get the video to resync. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep talking. And as much as I hate looking at the face that I'm making there, I'm going to keep talking to keep the stream going and hope that the video eventually catches back up to it or restarts or whatever. Because I don't want to have the situation happen like last time where I just couldn't even get the stream going again for whatever reason. This should be the thumbnail. Pondering the gold dubias. But anyways, so this Jack or John Frost guy on the Roach forum created this line, and I was talking to him about when you release these, you need to pick a different name for them that's not gold or gold in it. Yellow would be fine, but something that distances this from that original gold line. So again, I haven't heard from him in a while. He was supposed to send me all of his colony because he decided that once he was done perfecting it and he got the project right where he wanted it, he was going to completely dump it, never do anything with it again, and move on to doing something else with something else. So quite a quirky take there. But I won't complain because his what he created was very beautiful, and really hope that he contacts me and then I'm able to get my hands in the strain, because then I can cross those to my current strain and maybe get something very, very unique and beautiful out of it. So let me check my messages and see if there's anything there. Yeah, last time I messaged him was 2 years ago. He hasn't read the conversation yet. Last time he was on Roach Forum was May 27th. So, yeah, so he's been gone for a long time. And hopefully he will pop up again very soon, and we'll have him. And again, this is completely different from the gold line. Somebody on April 13th responded to the thread. A couple of people have been bringing the thread back out of the dead on here, eagerly in the hopes that he did something with this line. And people are saying like rip, you're a legend, etc. But I wonder if I can link to this attachment. But yeah, he did it. He got these very beautiful dubias with the females with bright yellow abdomens. They're beautiful, um, beautiful stock. Uh, boy, I really don't want to have to keep looking at that, but I don't want to end the stream either because we might have a bunch of shenanigans with getting it back up and going. So I'll just keep talking. Anyways, so I'm just doing a little reading on his threads. So yeah, he did it, and maybe he will pop in heroically in a year or two and be like, "All right, it's done. It's cornflakes." I kind of like that. I wonder if I get any. Let me look up cornflakes and see if that's corn. Kellogg's cornflakes is patented or whatever. That's not too far off from their coloration either. And apparently, I could call them cornflakes all one word too. And people will inevitably use them as feeders. So, some eggs, I think I like that. I think I like that. I think I like calling them cornflakes. That's a good name. It distances them enough from the gold line. It doesn't oversell it on their coloration because they're not as magical as John Frost or whatever his name's bright yellow dubia. Which, by the way, if anybody wants to start a breeding project like that, you can just keep selecting all the brightest yellow female dubias and just do his project basically. And this actually makes me feel like I should do this tonight. Go and pick some yellow dubia, a single gravid female dubia, and start doing John's work and put him on heat and just sort of power that project into the future and hopefully get a couple generations, within a year and get somewhere in case he doesn't ever come back. So, definitely don't pick up hissers with your teeth. I like cornflakes. I need to make a note. I need to make a note of this somewhere and just throw it on the desktop. Because yes, I do really like that. Cornflakes, all one word, so as to avoid any potential legal issues with Kellogg's brand cornflakes, even though it is just a regular old word. I'm gonna do a quick Google and see if I can fix the stream. YouTube stream video stopped. Frozen. Oh boy. Clear something maybe? That do anything? Uh-oh.